Hello and welcome to another Standard Games video on the official MTG Arena channel. Today we're gonna have some fun in the play queue with this blue-green druid ramp deck built around Tatyova and Jolrael, which is a relatively recent addition in Aftermath, a 4-mana 3/3 legendary human druid, saying at the beginning of combat on our turn, up to one target land we control becomes an XX green and blue bird creature with flying and haste until end of turn, where X is the number of cards in our hand, it's still a land, and whenever any land creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we get to draw a card. So we can pretty easily draw a card with the flying creature dealing damage to the opponent, but we might also have some other creature lands in play, and that's where Tatyova will come in handy, a 3-mana 3/3 legendary merfolk druid, saying land creatures we control have flying. Now of course the land creature from Jolrael already has flying, but we can also make some land creatures with Tatyova, saying whenever a land enters a battlefield under our control, if we have 7 or more lands, up to one target land we control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste that's also still a land. So now we get to make 3/3s with flying, and if those 3/3s hit the opponent, we also potentially get to draw a card with Jolrael if we have it in play. So the two druids have excellent synergy together, and we've got more cards that work very well in this deck, including a Llanowar Loam Speaker, a 2-mana 1/3, can tap to make 1 mana of any color, so it can potentially help ramp out some of our more expensive spells, but it can also tap, and then a target land we control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn, that's also still a land. So with a Tatyova in play, that land will also have flying, and with a Jolrael in play, that can also draw us additional cards. And then we also have 2 copies of Invasion of Zendikar, which will start by finding 2 basic lands when it enters a battlefield, and at 3 defense counters, this battle is pretty easy to transform into the Awakened Skyclave, which will be a 4/4 with Vigilance and Haste, and if it's on the battlefield, it's also a land in addition to its other types, and it can also tap for 1 mana of any color. So the Awakened Skyclave will also gain flying with the Tatyova out, and can also draw us extra cards with a Jolrael, so that also has great synergy throughout. And the curve of a turn 3 Topiary Stomper into Invasion is particularly nice, as our Stomper gets to find a basic when it enters a battlefield, but can only attack and block as soon as we have 7 or more lands in play, so similar to Tatyova, also requires us to have quite a few lands on the battlefield, but if we can curve a turn 3 Stomper into a turn 4 Invasion of Zendikar, and still have a land drop to play for the turn, then we have 7 lands in play. Stomper can immediately attack on turn 4 already to try and transform our Invasion of Zendikar, and put an Awakened Skyclave on the battlefield, which can then also maybe tap for mana in the same turn. And then to round things out, we've got 4 copies of a Joint Exploration, which can be played for 2 mana to just scry to and then draw a card, but we can also kick it, in which case it will cost us 3 mana total, and in that case we can also put a land card from our hand onto the battlefield, and it's going to be untapped, so we can potentially turn that very same land into a creature with Tatyova if we have enough lands in play, and then it can immediately attack, so that's also quite nice. And then another very synergistic card here is Mishra's Foundry, which can turn into a 2/2 creature that's also still a land, so it will also benefit from Tatyova and Jolrael in play. Can also potentially pump up an existing Mishra's Foundry that's attacking with a second copy, which is also an interaction that can come up, because we will be actively searching for Mishra's Foundry with our Titania's Command. The 6-mana sorcery lets us choose 2 modes between exiling target player's graveyard, and we gain 1 life for each card exiled this way, not the mode we're going to use most often. Instead we can search our library for up to 2 land cards and put them onto the battlefield tapped, so it's not limited to basic lands, so we can find our Mishra's Foundry with it. Can also decide to make a pair of 2/2 bear tokens, and finally put 2 +1/+1 counters on each creature we control. So sometimes we'll just make a pair of bear tokens and then put +1 counters on the team, and then the bear tokens will also receive those counters, since Titania's Command resolves from the top to the bottom, but sometimes getting 2 lands will be better, especially with the Tatyova in play, getting to turn those lands into 3/3 creatures, and with enough untapped lands they may be able to attack right away as well. And then finally we also have some cheap interaction with 4 copies of Fading Hope as a bounce spell that potentially lets us scry 1 as well, and then Make Disappear as a nice counter spell, also quite nice to keep up alongside Joint Exploration, which is an instant, so if the opponent doesn't play anything worth countering, we can still spend our mana on a Joint Exploration instead. And then we have a Memory Deluge at 4 mana as another nice payoff card for putting a lot of lands in play, since that's a way to refuel by taking a look at the top X cards of our library, where X is the amount of mana spent to cast it. Can first cast it for 4 mana, and then flash it back once again for 7 mana, so we get to dig very deep to look for cards like Tatyova and Jolrael. And then we also have 2 copies of Consuming Tide, which is a pretty interesting one in this deck. It says each player chooses a non-land permanent they control, and then return all non-land permanents not chosen this way to their owner's hands, and we also get to draw a card if the opponent has more cards in hand than we do. So Consuming Tide says a non-land permanent, so we get to keep all our creature lands in play that we animated with Tatyova, or that we maybe activated with a Loam Speaker before casting Consuming Tide, so that can be another fun way to close out the game, or to just reset the board so we can eventually rebuild and try to take over. And then our mana base, besides our Mishra's Foundry, we also have 4 copies of Yavimaya Coast and Dreamroot Cascade for mana fixing, plenty of basics to search up with our Topiary Stomper and Invasion of Zendikar, and then of course Soaring City and Boseiju, giving us additional utility since they can be channeled, offering a bit of interaction as well. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump in some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. Our hands got double Tatyova, but no early ramp, only 2 lands. So this is a mulligan, I think. This is better. We've got our turn to make disappear. Joint Exploration can also be kept up alongside it. And then probably ditch Titania's Command, which we're pretty far from casting. Turn 1 Evolving Adaptive, okay. Draw another Titania's Command, so we can counter whatever 2-mana creature they play. And next turn try to ramp with the Joint Exploration. Scrap Gorger would still grow the Adaptive. It doesn't hit very hard, but since we want to curve out here, I think I still counter it. Adaptive looks at both power and toughness. Okay, Tatyova's interesting. Still gonna take a while to enable her, but it would be a 3/3 to block Adaptive in the meantime. I think I still prefer Exploration, so we get Jolrael going a little bit sooner, which can potentially start drawing extra cards. It's gonna be a Loam Speaker next, also grows Adaptive. And we're just looking for lands here. We've got all the spells we need in hand. Alright, so we can take both. And then we can play Jolrael, animate a forest. Get in for 2. And then ideally play Tatyova before playing Titania's Command, so we can turn those land drops into additional 3/3s. Land is good. So that's land number 6. Need 7 to enable Tatyova. Polukranos 4/5 reach, that's gonna get in the way here. Still gonna take 3. Okay, so I can make a 4/4 creature, still doesn't attack past Polukranos unless we animate a 4/4. I guess if I try to put counters on it with command, it's too late since Jolrael triggers at the beginning of combat. So yeah, there's not much I can do here, just play Tatyova, play a land and pass. And then maybe next turn we can make something happen with Titania's Command. Augur of Autumn can start playing lands and creatures off the top, so that's a problem card as well. And Adaptive keeps getting in there. Another Jolrael. So yeah, play Islands, play Titania's Command. And then we'll go for lands and +1 counters, I think. Can get double Mishra's Foundry. Jolrael triggers, but we're not going to animate anything else. And then Coast and Jolrael can attack since we have a replacement. Pulukronos is blocking, could imply a pump spell here. Tyvar's stand for 1, yeah, that's enough to take out our 5/5, unfortunately. Defiler Vigor can also pump the team. So now we're in danger of just dying. Would be a great spot to find some of our bounce effects. Beast Caller grows the team. So we can still block Augur, fall to 1. Adaptive attacks. Yeah, I think we just take it. One way we potentially win is if we find a bounce spell for Pulukronos, or string together a card draw into some interaction, or if we find our mass bounce spell. And either way, I'm probably going to need Tatyova. And just a land. So if I play a land, animate with Tatyova, can animate Mishra's Foundry, which will turn into a flyer as well. So I think in order to win, we need our opponent not to block Mishra's Foundry, which can be pumped by the other Mishra's Foundry, after we make an additional 1/1 flyer here. Because Mishra's Foundry has a second activated ability here. But they're going to block a 3/3, so they don't see the line. So that's currently a 9 going through. Double block doesn't really matter. But the other Mishra's Foundry is another +2. And there we have it. Xaxis, a very close game here. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand seems decent, if we can pick up a land or two along the way. Keep up Fading Hope, turn to Make Disappear. Ichor Drinkers, so maybe our opponent on a black-white Phyrexian deck, or red-black Sacrifice. Forest is good. Not gonna bounce the Drinker itself. So Fading Hope can eventually bounce the token. Yeah, I think I let that resolve, since I don't have a great play lined up for next turn. I don't necessarily want to tap out for Tatyova. And then there might be scarier 3-drops I need to counter. Okay, Loam Speaker now gives me a play to set up Invasion, but I can still Fading Hope the token at least, so works for me. And Grafted Butcher will give their creatures Menace. It's a pretty powerful card for the Phyrexians deck. Still gonna hang on to Fading Hope. Although, yeah, our draws have not been the best so far. Invasion is probably needed just to get our mana sorted. But now we're pretty vulnerable. And an Elish Norn, also quite good here. So I have to bounce Elish Norn and then try to counter it on the way down, while trying not to die to what's already in play. So that's not an easy task. Jolrael could animate a land, transform Invasion, but then we're not dealing with Elish Norn. I guess I could bounce Elish Norn in response to it activating, and then hope to just survive the hit, which is not a guarantee. Alright, it's worth a shot, I guess. Just gonna pass a turn, keep up Fading Hope. Opponent animates the Incubator, so they're seemingly not interested in activating Elish Norn this turn. Another Inquisitor. Okay. Opponent's attacking all out anyway. So we have options. Probably need to just bounce Elish Norn. Alright, so let's line up some blocks. Yeah, we can block Inquisitor, Drinker, and Butcher, and then bounce Elish Norn, and then we should survive. Don't think I'm in a position to bounce Grafted Butcher, because then we'll probably die to the Elish Norn triggers. But at least we don't have to worry about our opponent replaying Elish Norn right now. We're at 5. Do have to watch out for the Butcher coming back from the graveyard and giving Menace. But for now, I guess the plan is trigger Jolrael, attack, draw card, and then take it from there. And then Skyclave can also attack, since it has Vigilance, and would also draw us a card here with Jolrael. So that's pretty sweet. Find Stomper ×2. So yeah, probably fine to play Stomper, keep developing our mana, and then I'll still have Make Disappear available. And could also kick a Joint Exploration if needed. Got plenty of blockers, so should be able to survive the Butcher. Okay, Incubator gets an extra counter, another 3/3. That's still manageable. And just another Butcher from hand. Can I survive this? +1/+1 and Menace. So I could double block a 4/4, double block a 2/2, and then go to 1 essentially. Yeah, maybe that needs to resolve and keep Make Disappear for Illusionorn. Opponent brings back the Drinker to make another Incubate token. That's fine. And our opponent attacks all out. Okay, double block here. Double block here. And then before damage, Joint Exploration. May as well kick it. And I'm happy with both lands, putting in play Foundry. So we're at 1 life. Very thin margins. But now I can play Tatyova. Play Cascade, trigger Tatyova. Animate a land with Jolrael, if I'd like. Which would be a 4/4. Thinking about whether I want to activate Loam Speaker as well, but I think I should just keep it back. And these can certainly attack. Does Jolrael attack? I don't think so. Gotta watch out for the Butcher next turn coming back, which is not something I can counter. So then, yeah, let's say our opponent brings that back. 2 Menace creatures, so I need to have at least 4 blockers back. And yeah, this should still work. Opponent's at 7, so next turn we're presenting lethal for sure. Titania's Command could also exile graveyards, which could be relevant this game. But yeah, pass the turn, gotta keep up Make Disappear. Could potentially play another Loam Speaker, as opposed to keeping Mishra's Foundry as an extra blocker. That seems reasonable as well. Can't quite play Stomper and keep up Make Disappear. Opponent does animate the Incubator, but they do need to sacrifice a creature artifact to bring back Butcher. So our opponent goes for Illusionorn, that gets countered. And then next turn we should have the win by flying over with some of our lands. And our opponent explodes. A very close game here against the Black-White Phyrexians. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. Hand seems keepable enough. Can try to buy time with double Make Disappear into an Invasion, which can ramp out Titania's Command. Now we've got Loam Speaker as a turn 2 option. Opponent's also blue-green, so not sure what to expect, but Loam Speaker into Invasion could be a nice curve, so we'll give it a shot. Jolrael is going to be more effective once we have a land that can attack and draws a card. So our opponent's a Domain deck, perhaps, with a Treaty getting another basic land. So they've got 4 basic land types in play. So yeah, our opponent could already cast a very cheap Leyline Binding, among others. We'll get double islands. And then next turn we can attempt Jolrael with Make Disappear backup. Opponent passes after tapping some mana strangely. Okay, we'll give Jolrael a try. Could also use Loam Speaker to animate one of our lands here. Although then if they have a Leyline Binding for Jolrael, that's not as good, so I think we'll play it safe and wait on activating a Loam Speaker on our land. Opponent did have the Leyline Binding, so that can now be countered. And then we probably transform our Invasion as opposed to going face, even though we don't get to draw a card that way. Their opponent's got a 5/5 Sapperling for the turn. Another treaty. Starts from chapter 1, gets another basic. So their opponent could have the full domain to enable a 1-mana binding. And they're probably going to go after Jolrael right away. Yep. Not going to run into another Make Disappear. Okay, so as the dust settles, we still have our Skyclave. Our hand's not bad. But it's not going to be an easy win from here. So how about another Invasion of Zendikar? I get to transform it with a Skyclave, and then still have Deluge and Make Disappear available. Could have potentially attacked for one with the Loam Speaker, since we'll have enough mana left. But I might want to use Deluge to then also cast a Fading Hope afterwards. And the 1 damage probably not going to matter much in the grand scheme of things. Okay, Lizard Blades, so if they try to equip a Sapperling to give a double strike, then a bounce spell's going to be quite effective. So our opponent might be packing some pump spells. Gaia's Might giving +5/+5 here would certainly hurt. Opponent's not attacking, so we can Deluge. And we did find Fading Hope, and probably grab a Mishra's Foundry at this point. Tatyova was excellent, so that's gonna make our creatures fly. And then Foundry will make a 3/3. And animate our land. So what's next? I can kill my opponent over the course of 2 turns here. Could also go for a Titania's Commands, getting a ton of +1 counters, and a couple more lands that turn into 3/3s. Although I don't think that presents lethal right now. So it seems much safer to just hit for 8s and keep up all our interaction. Alright, opponent's going for it, and it's time to block. Can maybe bait them into casting a pump spell. So triple block here would be enough to take out the Sapperling, and then Loam Speaker on 1/1. So now it's on the opponent to make the first move, since I'm technically okay with letting damage happen. To Inferno. Okay, opponent's gonna try to copy their next spell, which might be a Gaia's Might. Yep. So first we'll see where the copy goes. On the same one. So step 1, Fading Hope. And we've got Make Disappear with Casualty as backup, but that seemed to work already. And our opponent explodes. Awesome, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play, and our hand seems pretty clunky here, with no 3rd land to play Stomper. Although if we do find a 3rd land, Stomper into Invasion could be great. If I could replace Tatyova with a Forest, this hand would be great. Yeah, let's give it a shot. In a deck that needs to get up to 7 lands for Tatyova, every mulligan's gonna hurt. So just gotta hope for the best. Alright, Forest is great. And next turn the plan is Stomper into an invasion of Zendikar, hopefully followed by another land. Our opponent on a +1/+1 counter deck picked up another land here, so we're running hot. Could also decide to play Jolrael and draw cards next turn. But Invasion, Transform Invasion sounds even better. Opponent could potentially chump with a 1/1, although I don't see them necessarily doing that. And then we'll be able to keep up Make Disappear if we get to transform here. So yeah, we kept somewhat a risky hand, but this is the payoff. Getting to curve out beautifully. Our opponent gets double the counters thanks to the Ozolith. And Oddity will get countered, just want to spend my mana. So I can play Tatyova, play a land, play Jolrael, and doesn't matter too much which land we animate. Now we don't have any untapped lands left to animate with Jolrael, but that's okay, since we'll still draw off the other creature lands here, basically. Opponent falls to 9, get to draw 2 cards, and could even Fading Hope the token to rub it in. Yeah, this was an absolutely brutal draw for the opponent to face. And there we have it. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Hand is keepable if Loam Speaker survives to make blue mana especially. Missing a few of our payoff cards perhaps, but eventually Titania's Command is not bad. Opponent on Esper, and a third Loam Speaker is a bit much. Happy to draw 1. Second one is sometimes somewhat dubious, but a third one is definitely too much. And there's the full playset. Alright, sure, play another one. Could also kick a Joint Exploration, but might as well just play a Loam Speaker, which is similar to playing a land. And then could hit for 1. Don't think I'll need to Fading Hope anything. Three mana, still nothing. Picked up Make Disappear. So I guess now I'm down to just hit for 1. And then keep up Make Disappear / kick Joint Exploration to at least start putting a few lines in play in case there's a sweeper at some point. They want to go double Loam Speaker and their opponent cast and Depopulate. Now we can also start activating Loam Speaker to apply more pressure, so that's certainly an option. And Stomper is probably good enough to keep. Jolrael is questionable with only 2 lines in play. Alright, still no land. Well, we'll try Stomper, I guess. And then I'll still have Fading Hope. In case our opponent does wipe the board, we could bounce Stomper back to hand, for instance. Get an island. Opponent's got a Soul Partition. Can still recast Stomper for 5 mana, so not the end of the world. So at this point, probably hit for 1, since I'm not gonna save a Loam Speaker when I have 2 more in hand. I'll land 5. For a Sunset Revelry, make a couple 1/1s, draw card, gain 4, so they got the full value. But we finally found a land. So, good Titania's Command, there's a chance it gets countered. So I think Stomper is maybe a good middle ground. Good if it resolves, if it gets countered, so be it. And a Dissipate hits it. Okay. Would love to keep up my own Make Disappear, but we're not really in a position to keep up 2 mana. Alright, land is good. So now what? Could start animating lands with Loam Speaker. Gotta watch out for Wandering Emperor as well. Tatyova's not active quite yet. So would love to go for Titania's Command, get 2 more Mishra's Foundries. But I can't cast it with Make Disappear backup, which is probably what I need. So maybe cast another Loam Speaker, and then wait and see if opponent casts a board wipe. Or I can animate a land, see if they want to run out a Wandering Emperor to kill it, and then I have to decide if it's worth saving. Or I can just pass a turn, but then I'm not really doing much either to progress my own game plan. Yeah, maybe the plan is just play 1 more Loam Speaker. And then if they do pull the trigger on a Farewell, I can either counter it, or we can Fading Hope our own creatures, Cry, try and hit a land drop for Titania's Command, and then we'll be okay. So I'll just pass it back. Siphon Insight, not what we wanted to see, but that does resolve, so they can flash it back. Creature lanes are typically good against control strategies, but we gotta make sure the coast is clear. So this does seem like they are setting up a board wipe. Temporary lockdown will exile all the Loam Speakers, and Make Disappear with Casualty is not good enough to counter. So yeah, I guess we'll bounce one of the Loam Speakers back. Could eventually destroy Lockdown with a Boseiju, but it's not like I can tutor it to my hand, it's gonna go into play with command. Opponent dissipates, so now I can actually counter the Lockdown, which seems worthwhile. And don't even need to sacrifice a creature. So that worked out. And that's good enough for a concession. Alright, I'll take it. Next turn cast Titania's Command, get double Mishra's Foundry, and then we can start applying some meaningful pressure onto the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Got our interaction. Loam Speaker can also ramp out Jolrael, although probably gonna go Loam Speaker into Stomper and then Jolrael, because otherwise we don't get to actually hit the opponent with our land. Tatyova's a nice pickup, so we've got the whole family here. Opponent's blue-black. If Loam Speaker eats a removal spell, it's not the end of the world. They could also counter or Topiary Stomper. So I'm kind of considering running out Tatyova as bait, since I would rather have Tatyova countered, strangely enough. Don't really want to animate a land with Loam Speaker and have it potentially killed, because then bouncing it is a pretty big setback. So yeah, let's go with Tatyova. Feels like our opponent's keeping up a counterspell. And yeah, they're gonna Make Disappear. Alright, that's fine. Could attack for 1, could keep up Fading Hope, which is maybe safer. Because if they do kill Loam Speaker, I would probably save it. Okay. So now I have the option of playing Jolrael and connecting with one of my lands, but there's quite a bit of mana available for the opponent. So instead I'll play Stomper, and this time we can pay for Make Disappear. So that resolves, get an island. And then hopefully Jolrael can stick the landing as well. Still just gonna attack for 1 as opposed to animating one of my lands with a Loam Speaker. But once we have a Jolrael in play, that ability is going to be incredibly valuable, as that's another way of drawing an extra card. And a Fairy Mastermind, fair enough. So, something I might want to consider bouncing, although don't mind taking 2. Could also let the opponent draw extra cards with the ability if we connect with Jolrael, so that's the main reason to try and get it off the board. But it's a pretty cheap creature that our opponent can easily replay, so Fading Hope's not really the best answer to it. Surge Engine is next, okay. Can be leveled up. Mastermind hits us for 2. So yeah, bouncing here with Fading Hope. Somewhat questionable. Although it does mean that if we next turn play Jolrael, and our opponent wants to replay Mastermind, then I could bounce it again, and if they do Mastermind, then they're not countering Jolrael either. So maybe it's still fine. If I'm gonna end up bouncing it anyway, I might as well save 2 damage. And then I can scry towards another land. Stomper's also decent. So yeah, I think I'm still in favor of playing Jolrael right now. See what the response is. Animate my island. Our opponent had to go for the throat. So I could save Jolrael with Fading Hope. And I think I should. Although there's a pretty big setback in terms of tempo here. Having to replay our 4-drop again. Opponent's gonna cut down Loam Speaker now. And they could level up Surge Engine to start attacking. So this could actually be a Training Grounds deck. Both Surge Engine and Mastermind have nice abilities that get a discount from it. So yeah, playing Jolrael, not the best. So I think I prefer Stomper plus maybe a Joint Exploration as well. Haven't played land for a turn yet, so if I resolve Stomper and then put a land in play after drawing with Exploration, we can actually start attacking. Opponent's probably flashing in Mastermind in response. But it does mean we get to resolve our spell. And then do we want an Invasion of Zendikar? I don't really need more lands in play to enable Stomper. And Jolrael also doesn't really need more lands, so I think we can do without. Mastermind draws. And hit for 4. So our opponent's gonna get ahead on cards here with a Mastermind. Just gotta hope that double Stomper and Jolrael can apply enough pressure. Although eventually Surge Engine could also turn into a 5/4. Kaito's next.
No secret is safe from me. I know something you don't know.
And another Surge Engine. Ooh, Consuming Tide. Could turn the tide of battle. Although I don't think it's quite the right time for it. Even though I could attack with both Stompers and then potentially replay one afterwards. It also means their opponent doesn't have to bounce Kaito just yet. I don't think we're in danger of dying next turn if they turn on Surge Engine, make the other one a 5-powered creature. It's still 10 damage, which is not quite enough. So instead we could go Jolrael, animate one of my lands, and then draw and see what we pick up. And then I don't think Foundry is getting busy. So our opponent will get to draw again off Mastermind. And another land. Okay. Sadly, Consuming Tide is a sorcery, so it's not like I get to animate a land and then Consuming Tide, but with the Mishra's Foundry we can threaten lethal. And maybe force them to chum block. So there we see Evolved Sleeper, another creature that would benefit from a Training Grounds potentially. Opponent hits for 8. That happens. And gotta hope they don't have any interaction for the tide here. Okay, so what's the plan here? Do I tide before or after attacking? Because I could just move to attackers, animate a land, and then see what happens. Opponent could block with Sleeper, level it up twice, trade for Stomper. But they still need an answer for Jolrael as well. And then there's also Mishra's Foundry we can animate. Although they could have some cut downs in hand as well. Or another Fairy Mastermind to flash in. I don't think I want a Consuming Tide main phase 1. So let's trigger Jolrael. And then I gotta decide whether I want to animate Mishra's Foundry here. And I guess I do. Can still Consuming Tide afterwards, although I won't be able to replay as much. Move to attackers. Everyone's going face. This might be a cut down to deal with Foundry initially. Although even cut down and then block Stomper, they would still be taking lethal. Although we have to imagine that if they attacked with Surge Engine and Mastermind, they have something planned here. Because this was all on board. Alright, looks like damage happens, so our opponent must have given up here. I'll take it. Alright, so we got to see our blue-green druid ramp deck in action, and certainly got to see some cool synergies. Tatyova alongside Jolrael is amazing, but even the Awakened Skyclave, once we transform our invasion, is quite nice alongside the Jolrael, getting to draw extra cards, or alongside Tatyova, getting to fly over any blockers. And then there's a bunch more synergies that we maybe didn't get to see, like the Loam Speaker drawing extra cards with Jolrael in play or flying over with Tatyova. So yeah, there's quite a few synergies that may not be obvious at first glance. Even the Consuming Tide as a way to bounce a bunch of stuff back while still leaving our creature lands to maybe cross the finish line. Another interaction we didn't get to see, although we got close to it in one of the games. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with how the deck turned out. The overall power level may not be good enough to compete on the ranked ladder in Standard right now, especially with Sheoldred being one of the popular cards that can also punish the card draw from a card like Jolrael, but I'm still pretty happy with where it ended up, so it might be a fun deck to introduce people to Standard with if they're new to the game. So that'll do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.